Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This video is going to be an intro to a small short series of a couple of videos talking over the different types of filtering and purifying water. This first video specifically is just going to be like very wave top, basic pros and cons, how things work. And the following videos will be a little bit more in depth, talking through a little bit more detail of how everything works and what some of the pros and cons are. Also, things are complicated slightly by the fact that depending on what you need and the scenario that you're in, there's also different pros and cons depending on if it's like a vacation, camping trip, some sort of emergency situation, whether you do or don't have power, whether the tap water is considered safe to drink or not. The way things are organized on the table is basically just chemical filtration over here. This is just representative of boiling water, and everything on that side of the table is all mechanical filtration. The mechanical filtration is probably the easiest to use because all it requires is you to pass the contaminated water through one of the filter devices and then have clean drinking water out the other end. Some of the systems take longer than others. The next easiest would probably be boiling water, just however long it takes you to go from the ambient temperature of the water to boiling. This is how long it takes before you have purified water, and then the time it takes for it to cool back down to be able to drink. And then the longest is the chemical filtration, where it takes anywhere between 30 minutes and 4 hours before you go from contaminated to clean drinking water. For the chemical filtration, there's a couple different types of chemicals that are used. One of the most basic is iodine. So over here, the potable aqua iodine tablets. Typically they'll come with just the bottle of iodine tablets. It does definitely leave an aftertaste, which is why sometimes you can buy it with the taste neutralizing additional set of tablets. The bottle doesn't take up very much space, and there's 50 of them in here. Each tablet will do a full quart of water, so either the military style canteen or the liter water bottle. That's how much use you can get out of each tablet. Just for reference, this is the size of each of the iodine tablets. Another common chemical that's used is chlorine dioxide. It's very similar to bleach. Some of them will come in like a liquid 2-part solution. As far as time that it takes to go from contaminated to treated or filtered water, the mechanical filtration on the right hand side will take the least amount of time. Some of them are slower flow rate than others. That 4-stage reverse osmosis over there in the top right corner will do as many as 75 gallons per day. The flow rates on the Sawyers are maybe a little faster, but they don't filter as much. The Berkey right there in the middle, depending on how many filter elements you have, take typically on average about 15 minutes to do a gallon. That is, in the video, a small Berkey. They do come in larger sizes, and it's currently only equipped with 2 out of 4 filter elements. Some of the bigger Berkeys you can have as many as 6 filter elements, so 3 times faster than the flow rate of this. But depending on how much you need will obviously determine how many filter elements you buy. The next fastest method of purifying water would be boiling. However long it takes you to go from ambient temperature water to boiling at a rolling boil to actually effectively kill the bacteria and viruses is how long it takes to go from untreated to treated water. However, you have to wait until it cools back down before it's actually drinkable. The amount of time it takes to heat a little pot of or cup of water with a little pocket stove or camping stove, something with a low heat output, is obviously a lot longer than if you had access to your full-size kitchen stove. And then the next slowest, or the slowest of the 3 different methods of filtration, are the chemical filtration. It takes anywhere between 30 minutes to 4 hours, depending on which technology, which type of chemical you're actually using. As far as taste, the chemical filtration is going to have the biggest effect on taste. Regardless of how the water tastes to begin with, it's going to taste stronger more of a chemical taste than before treatment. The boiling method, you're not adding anything to the water, but you are taking some of the water out just due to the fact that it's evaporating, being turned into steam. So you're left with a higher concentration of the other dissolved solids and whatever other particles are in the water to begin with. And then, depending on how finely filtered the filtration system works, will affect the overall taste of the water. Something like Life Straw or Sawyer Mini doesn't filter as much as a 4-stage reverse osmosis filter, but it also takes up a lot less space. As far as ease of use, the mechanical filtration method is probably the easiest in that case as well, because as long as you know which end to put the dirty contaminated water and which end to drink out of, it's pretty hard to mess up. Boiling is fairly easy too, it just requires a little bit more moving parts. Your fire, heat source, the vessel to hold the water, maybe a lid to keep too much of the water from evaporating, and then some time to wait for the water to cool before drinking out of either the same pot or cup that you boiled it in, or transferring it over to a different vessel. And then lastly, the chemical filtration, while it's not necessarily difficult, it's not the easiest. It's the least easy of the 3 different methods. As long as you can read and follow the directions, they're included on either the bottle or the box that it comes in, or the little packet that the pills are sealed inside of. You'll be able to use it. It's just not as easy as the mechanical or the boiling water methods. For repeat use, you can filter as much water as you have pills for when you use the chemical filtration. For boiling water, as long as you have the fuel and the means to continue to boil water, then you can boil as much water as you have access to. No real limit to how much water that you're limited to boiling, besides how much will fit in your vessel and how long it takes you to boil that water. And then lastly, the filters, they do have a rated service life. If you're filtering dirtier water, they're going to clog sooner. Some of the mechanical filters have a way of cleaning the filter to get a little bit more life out of it, but they do have just a specific useful service life. Something like a Life Straw, it's only 1,000 gallons. Apparently the Sawyer Mini can do as many as 10,000 gallons. Berkeys typically will do about 5,000 gallons before they need to have the filter elements changed. And then the more complicated 4-stage reverse osmosis filters like that one in the corner, depending on which filter element you're talking about, will determine the service life of that specific component. So if you're talking over like the carbon block filter right there in the middle, they come in different sizes. So the one that's on there is a 5 micron. This replacement is a 1 micron. It'll do 35,000 gallons worth of chlorine in its life before it needs to be replaced, but only do 2,000 gallons of chloramines. That's at 1 gallon per minute. If you're only doing half of a gallon per minute, it'll do a little bit more chloramines. Depending on where you live, will determine how much or how little chlorine and chloramines you have. The color changing DI resin, that deionization resin on the side, is pretty easy to tell if it needs to be replaced because it'll turn brown when it's used up. And the sediment filter on the far left, once it starts to get clogged, you'll be able to tell it's no longer white in color. Another thing to keep in mind is the chemical filtration. They're designed for a specific quantity of water. So keep that in mind. If you only need to filter a small amount, you're going to be filtering extra, and probably be good to have a way of storing the surplus. Whereas the mechanical filtration, you just filter as much or as little water as you need, as long as you have the time to wait for it to filter. And then boiling water as well, because of the time it takes to go from contaminated to purified water, you might want to store the surplus so that you're not continually boiling a new batch of water every time you need to take a sip. With that, I think that's thorough enough for the intro video. We'll do 3 separate videos kind of in the same playlist along this series, talking over the pros and cons of each chemical, mechanical, and then boiling water. If you guys have any questions or any comments or any other tips or methods that you found of filtering water besides those on here, feel free to leave them in the comments.